Episode 3 of Glass of Joe is a go with my now well-groomed friend, PJ Glasser.
You like that, don't you?
Yeah.
I did,
PJ,
yeah.
how did that feel to get a haircut finally?
Joe, so good, dude. I mean, honestly, it's the back of my neck is probably thanking me because it can finally breathe and see the air. But
Oh, man.
no, it felt good. It's nice to be able to not have all that hair on my head.
I got lucky because my grandfather's a barber, so I got it cut a couple of weeks ago, and I stayed clean, and I'm getting it cut again this weekend. So something to look forward to this weekend. But not the only thing to look forward to this weekend. For the last 3 weeks or so, we've kind of been getting by on NASCAR, on Bundesliga, and on UFC. And side note on that, I don't know if you watched it all this weekend, but if you haven't, Cody Garbrandt's knockout, look it up, one of the best you'll ever see. And Amanda Nunes continues to just dominate and clean out 2 women's divisions. So it was a pretty good pay-per-view. And Fight Island got announced finally. So that whole joke, that's a real thing now. But we've been getting by on those 3 entities: Bundesliga, UFC, NASCAR. Something is back this week, PJ.
Yes,
I'm looking
is.
forward to my haircut. You are looking forward to the return of the PGA Tour.
Oh, man, am I ever. Joe, I mean, there are a few things I look forward to more during a week than when I wake up on a Thursday morning and I get to see my golf DraftKings lineup. And I see that of my 6 players, 3 are already +5 through the first 9 holes, and I'm already out of it. But I'm fired up. And what's great, too, about the golf is, I mean, we got a great field this week. Top 5 players in the world, 16 of the top 20. These guys are itching to play. They want to play. They know they want to get their FedEx Cup points so that they can make the FedEx Cup playoffs, get ready for those major championships. So I'm pumped for the field this week at Colonial. Put a little money, a little sprinkle on Justin Rose this week at Colonial. Won there in 2018. And I think Rosie's a guy who hits it in the fairway and putts well, which you need to do at Colonial. And I think he's a good play this week. And the beautiful thing about betting golf, too, right now for the first couple of weeks is there's so much unknown. Take a flyer on one of these, guys who has great odds to win that you can win a lot of money off of.
Yeah, the 2 guys that stuck out to me, and it's not really going out on a limb, and you're not going to get great odds, but I was looking at Justin Thomas and Brooks Koepka. Why? Justin Thomas, the medalist member, he was there, killed it on the TNT coverage of the match. I think he's been playing plenty of golf, and I think he won't be that rusty. I know a lot of these guys, whether it's Arizona, Texas, Florida, have been playing plenty of golf now and staying sharp. But particularly him, he's been around a TV setting. He knows what that was like with no fans. So I like that. And then I think Koepka just because he's always been the guy who says, like, I don't like golf and I don't practice much. So if anybody is unaffected by all that's happened, it's him. He's like, he probably kept the same routine. He probably couldn't care less of whether or not there are or not fans there. And he's just the best golfer in the world. So those 2 guys is who I would look at for a pick. But it's good to have it back. And now every Thursday, or when we record, we can have ourselves a little PJ DraftKings lineup segment going forward and pick ourselves a winner each week. We're starting to get back to live sports, people. It's exciting.
It is.
They're starting to kind of come by the week now. We still have no clue about baseball. Baseball's still arguing. We don't know what we'll see. And I know Rob Manfred said that if it gets to a certain point, he just might institute something that both sides have to agree to. I don't know how that works, if it could get ugly. But the NBA was the big story last week for our episode, and it's continued to remain one of the lead stories because they've kind of fleshed out the rest of how it's going to work with, no PED testing, but no recreational drug testing. Mm-hmm. You can go to golf courses, but you can't take your family who's quarantining with you to the Disney parks. Like, they've started to release all those details. So general thoughts, I guess, on how you kind of view this plan now that it's been fully sort of released to the public, all details included.
I mean, for me personally, I think that everything they could have done so far to lay out what's going on, they have hit the mark on. Adam Silver, we've talked about, we think he's probably the best commissioner in all of sports. On paper, it looks great. Now with the MLS heading over to Disney World as well, it makes things a little more crowded. A little bit. You have the parks reopening, so people will be over there. So you definitely have a lot of people over in Disney World, including the NBA players. Until somebody, though, gets this virus, hopefully nobody does, but until somebody does and we see this action going planned and how they limit the spread of it, we'll truly know how effective this is. But from everything they've released and what we've seen, I mean, there's no reason
They've got
yeah.
they've got the plan in place. They know what they want to do. Just a matter of execution when the time comes, and that's just a kind of wait and see thing. You hope, like you said, nobody gets it. Somebody does. How well can they execute the plan that they have in place?
Right.
And I think they pretty much answered every question for the most part that anybody could have. You know, like I mentioned before, how limited will players be? Will it be like you're almost in, confinement, or can you kind of roam out? And Silver said that it would be like a college campus sort of feel that they're going for, where you can still do things, but like just with the players. So they've kind of big picture, not just the on-court play or the standings. Big picture, they have every little detail pinpointed, and there's some promise there. But then as far as the play itself, now we know exactly how that 8-9 thing is going to work for the seeding. Yep. If you're within 4 games, you get a play-in game. And now that the rest of the plan is fleshed out, we could actually start talking basketball and the actual games and the standings. So it's a little bit easier to kind of sort out in the East because it's just the Wizards 5.5 games back. Mm-hmm. The West is more muddled because you've got 4 teams within 4 games of the 8 seed right now. We'll start with the East because obviously Washington, we followed it closely all year. Yeah. Do you see the Wizards getting into a play-in game or no?
To me, the Wizards, it all comes down to whether or not John Wall plays and what kind of John Wall we get. They obviously have to make up 2 games over an 8-game stretch. I can't remember the 8 teams they play off the top of my head. I know Milwaukee's 2 of those teams. Obviously, all the teams they're playing are good because they're of the 22 remaining teams who are all going to be in the playoffs mostly. I think if Wall plays, they possibly have a chance. My gut, though, is telling me that probably not. It's just their schedule's tough. Not only do you need to win and keep pace with the Magic, but you need to have them lose games as well while they're also trying to win. I know the Nets could drop down to that 8 possibly as well, but I don't know. I don't think the Wizards can catch them and force that play-in game.
Yeah, the Wizards' schedule it wasn't among the easier ones. It wasn't among the harder ones. The remaining schedule is kind of somewhere in between. The Magic, though, who they are chasing for that 8 spot, they do have one of the weaker strength of schedules remaining. It's not impossible because the Wizards are only 2 games back. Throw out the half a game now because that doesn't mean anything because everybody's playing the same amount of games. So essentially they're 6 games back as opposed to 5.5. So they need to make up the 2 games. Magic have an easier strength of schedule. You don't know with John Wall. I will say that the Wizards have been streaky, and if they can be hot and Bradley Beal can be going off, they'd have a shot. But you're asking a lot for the Wizards. They have to make up those 2 games and then win back-to-back games against the Magic in that play-in.
With all these games, they'll be playing in a limited amount of time. A team like Milwaukee, if they're, playing a back-to-back or whatever, you don't know how many minutes Giannis will play, while the Wizards will be playing everybody. So that'll obviously be something to look for as well.
The West, though, the West is more muddled because you've got the Grizzlies sitting in the 8th seed right now, and then 4 teams are already in that play-in sort of distance. So really it's kind of a battle for the 9 seed to kind of catch the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies do have one of the toughest strength of schedules remaining, but in order to ensure being in the play-in game, they've really only got to worry about winning like 2 or 3 games to at least guarantee themselves a play-in. I kind of disregard the Spurs, especially after the news that LaMarcus Aldridge had surgery.
Right. Exactly.
I kind of write them off. The Kings, being a kind of a younger, inexperienced team who kind of surprised some people to even be where they are, I don't really look to them. I think it comes down to the Blazers and the Pelicans, the 2 most talented teams vying for those last couple of spots. The Blazers are probably going to get Yusuf Nurkic back to go in the mix with Lillard and McCollum. The Pelicans, they were hot, young team, Zion. It comes down to those 2 for me. And again, there's so many variables that you don't know. Like you mentioned, it's a great point that you don't know some of the teams that they're playing. Will they rest players? So It's going to be so random and weird to kind of see how this all sorts out because somebody on paper like the Wizards, like you said, might have a harder strength of schedule right now. But all of a sudden, if Giannis sits out, or in the West, if the Pelicans have the Lakers, and if LeBron sits out because it's a back-to-back, that changes things. So I can't really get too much into the games and the schedules because you don't know what it's going to look like. who's going to be playing, but just talent-wise, I like the Blazers and the Pelicans. I actually wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, the Grizzlies probably only need to win 2, maybe 3 to keep their spot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they fail to do that because they do have a really tough schedule coming up. I think they were top 5 in strength of schedule remaining in terms of how difficult it is. And they were we talk about young teams who were hot riding it into the playoffs. They were young, hot, riding it into the playoffs. So how will they react to this adversity of a 4-month layoff? You know, they've got John Morant and a lot of other young talent, but how will they react to going from 4 months off to a playoff push right away now?
The Blazers are definitely the team that the Grizzlies don't want to face just because of McCollum and Lillard and the experience that they've had in the postseason. The Pelicans will be interesting because of the young stars that they've had, this long layoff. You wonder how it'll help them. I think, though, what you were talking about, we were talking about with the Wizards, there's the saying in the NFL on your schedule, it's not about who you play, it's when you play them. Exactly. And that's what all these games will be about. It'll be about who the Grizzlies, Blazers, Pelicans, Kings, Spurs all play, and when they play them, who's resting and all that. I think the Grizzlies will safely be in. It'll come down to the Blazers, Pelicans, Kings, and Spurs, and you'd have to think out of that group with the experience and the star power, you'd have to lean for it.
Yeah, again, I don't necessarily think the Grizzlies will drop out because they do have a decent enough lead. But, again, it wouldn't surprise me just because they're a young team who it's just a question mark how they handle the adversity, and the Blazers and Pelicans are very, very talented. I think the best way for me to put it would be, as far as who gets the 8 seed, after the play-in game, if it's Blazers versus Grizzlies, the Blazers are coming through. If it's Grizzlies versus Pelicans, toss-up, I probably give it to the Pelicans. If it's Blazers versus Pelicans in the play-in game, I probably give it to the Blazers. So it's going to come from those 3 teams, and it's just going to depend really on, like you said, who plays which team and when.
Exactly.
And then you kind of go from there. And I'm excited to see how this all plays out because while you're going to probably have some games that are duds because, like you mentioned, back-to-backs, people rest. But there's going to be a lot of very intense basketball.
No question.
Those 8 games are going to have a big-time playoff feel. So I'm very, very excited. And, look, we go from nothingness for how long we've had nothingness to
everything
a lot
coming
at the same time. I read an article this week that some networks are going to have problems like finding the way to put everything on TV because there's just going to be so much. So I'm not complaining about that.
They're going to need a Fox Sports 18 and a CBS. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they might.
ESPN 8 the Ocho. It's got to be a real thing instead of just cornhole, which I've loved watching during quarantine. It's going to actually have basketball games on it. So
it might.
It's a very exciting time. Right around the corner. We're looking at the end of July. I guess that's still kind of a long way to go, month and a half, but hey, we've waited this long. What's another month and a half? So it's on the horizon. Golf is back this week. One sport that we are also excited to get back end of July is the NHL, and we talk about plenty of hockey with our guest for the day, Joe Beninati, play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals, between the league and the games themselves and how the playoffs might play out to just some incredible stories about the Capitals and their cup-winning season.
Joined now by the play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals, Joe Beninati. Joe, thanks so much for joining us and being here. How's everything going?
PJ and Joe, it's my pleasure. Hey, thank you very much for making me go to work today. There's been far too little of that for far too long. So this is good. I get to wear my right logo.
There you go.
The company.
Let's my cap, go for it. So it's good to see you.
There you go. It's great to hear.
The only thing that would be better if we were doing this from an ice rink.
Exactly. It's great to hear a familiar voice. I know for me, one of the things in the last couple of months has been I should have been hearing your voice. I should have been hearing Gary Cohen's voice for the Mets. I should have been hearing Doc Emmerich's voice, and we haven't heard it. So it's great to hear your voice more than anything.
That does mean a lot, guys. I'm sure you get used to these habits, and especially at this time of the year. So I think we're all feeling a little bit withdrawn from all of that. So
yes,
let's start speaking positively and start speaking optimistically.
Exactly. When we go through the questions here, we're going under the assumption for everything that, sure, there's the 900-pound elephant in the room that something bad could happen and the restart that is proposed doesn't happen. But we're going under the assumption that everything is going to go as planned because we need some good news and we want to work off of that.
Joe B, just getting right into it. When you saw the NHL's return to play proposal, what were your initial thoughts about it?
PJ, I wasn't overly thrilled with the 24 teams, but I understand that the NHL, in this most unusual of seasons, wanted to include as many people and as many teams and as many markets as possible. So I'm not going to quibble with that. But if I had my druthers, I might have shrunk it maybe to 20. I might have even shrunk it to 16, to be perfectly honest with both of you. I would have almost, hey, every team's played 68 games. Roll back to 68, seed them from there, and let's go giddy up. But more than anything, I just think opening it up to 24 teams is going to take a long time in the process, and I don't know if time is on our side there with respect to where we are in the world of the virus right now. But I was thrilled that the league, the Board of Governors, the owners, the Players Association, that they were able to come to an agreement on a return-to-play program. So again, I don't want to be a pessimist about this. I want to speak optimistically about it, and let's go giddy up. I hope we can do it as soon as possible, as safely as possible.
Now, in terms of the play itself, there's the round-robin play for the top seeds, and then there's the play-in 5-game series for the lower-seeded teams. In terms of the round-robin play, what do you foresee being the intensity? Is it going to be a playoff intensity? Do you think teams are going to kind of treat them as tune-ups and not really care so much about the seeding?
Well, I hope so now with regard to – I think the players managed to get their wish from the Board of Governors, from the commissioner with respect to seeding. I think we've seen in the last 24 to 48 hours, we've seen the league go away from the hard and fast bracket format to a reseeding with each round. Once we start the 16 teams, once you play into 16, there's going to be a reseeding with each step. I think that was something that the players were adamant about. One of the things I didn't like with regard to the top four getting the bye in the round robin for those teams, heck, Boston was going to run away more than likely. I realized we still had 10 games left for most teams, but Boston was going to win that President's Trophy. They were playing extremely well. They had a comfortable lead. In my opinion, they deserved to be the top seed, but now you're going to let Boston play against the likes of Washington, Philly, and Tampa for that top four seeding. So guys, if what I understand is true, whomever comes out of that top four round robin little mini tournament for the top seed, they get the lowest remaining seed after the play-in round. So you want that. So you're going to play hard. I don't think it's going to be a grip and grin sort of giggle session, no hitter.
Yeah.
I think they're going to need to get to be up to as high speed as they can right from the get-go.
On the flip side of that, Joe B, do you think that if the 9 through 12 seeds, if they have a lot of success in the playoffs this year, could you possibly see a few years down the road the NHL maybe expanding from 8 teams in each conference to maybe going to 10 teams? Or is this year just such a crazy abnormality, we should treat it as such, and the 8 teams will be in the playoffs for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I'd like to stay at 16, PJ, especially once Seattle comes in and you have the 32 teams, balance it out. There are some people who would like to see it seeded, 1 through 8 or 1 through 16, regardless of conference. And I know that travel concerns come to mind with that regard. I know the NHL a few years back was always hoping to get those natural playoff rivalries by the way they had structured the playoffs that we've come to know in the last handful of years, where you're going to pretty much be more than likely to get a Washington-Pittsburgh series, more than likely to get a Washington-New York series. They wanted to have the Philadelphia-Pittsburgh type series, those natural rivalries. I completely understand that. I just want the most fair type of tournament. I don't necessarily want to go back to the time when I believe there were 21 teams in the NHL and 16 of them made the playoffs. Yeah. That to me is too much. I like the 16. I like the 50%. Once we get Seattle in, 16 out of 32 sounds just fine to me. I guess a lot of that stems from the fact that I've been connected to a team that's been a pretty high seed for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I don't necessarily want to see those instant upsets. I don't want to see all 4 number 1 division winners like last year bounced in the first round. I don't know if that's good. That makes the regular season seem hollow to me.
You mentioned the upsets from last year. there's kind of a couple ways we can see this long layoff playing out and the return to play. Do you think it will lend itself to more upsets as everybody has to deal with the rust? Or do you think it's going to lend itself to fewer upsets as a lot of the times those lower seeded teams ride the momentum of a late season hot streak and the home crowd that they won't have anymore?
Joe, anybody who tells you they can handicap this tournament is bold-faced lying to you. You can't. You can't, because by the time we get into it, and it sounds like best case scenario is late July, early August. By the time you get into it, most teams will have spent an entire normal off season out of play. So this is not the resumption of the way it was in March. I don't know that you can figure it to be that way. If you were, a team like Philadelphia that was going great guns in March, that more than likely would have passed Washington and Pittsburgh for that Metro Division title. Sure, we would have automatically minted Philadelphia as a contender. I don't know what the Flyers are going to look like after a 4.5-month layoff. Nobody does. And now you bring in the fact that you've had this long of a, quote, rest, which has allowed all the teams that had major injury problems to heal. A team like Columbus, which was so battered during the regular season, losing so many of their regular players, those guys, for the vast majority, are going to be back on the ice. And a lot of them are going to be ahead of speed with respect to everyone else. A team like, again, I'll go to Columbus. Seth Jones has actually been on the ice rehabbing way in advance of any of the phase 2, phase 3 type training camps or return to play protocols. So a team like Colorado, which was so injured and so good, by the way, watch out for the Avalanche. They're healthy now. A team like Pittsburgh is going to get Jake Gensel back. Hello, that's one of their prime goal scorers. So if you think you can cherry pick this, handicap this, I don't know. You're better than me. Your crystal ball is much better than mine.
You say there's no way to handicap the playoffs this year. Of those lower seeded teams, who could you see possibly making a deep run in the postseason?
Well, think about the 8-9 matchup in the play-in round, Toronto, Columbus. I think the world of the job that John Tortorella has done in Columbus this season. They've got two goalies, especially one in Elvis Merzlikins that very few people know about or remember from back in March. They have the type of team now that gets healthy with John's work ethic that, to me, scares the bejesus out of everybody in the East. I just think that team is made for playoffs. We've seen them give the Washington Capitals back in 2018 all they could handle in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That team sort of frightens me. I love what Vancouver can do, and they put their best team on the ice, and they get Jacob Markstrom, a healthy Jacob Markstrom. Now, where's the rust going to be on him since he hadn't played since February? But if he's back in what likely was Vezina Trophy finalist type form, Vancouver is a team to watch out for. They are definitely on the rise. Their younger talents are blossoming at all the right moments, and I just think that there could be your potential kind of dark horse team. That's one East and West, but I think the matchups are really interesting. Carolina, who everybody respects the job that Rod Brindamore does. Again, another team with tremendous work ethic, another team that's been getting healthy. Dougie Hamilton will be ready to go whenever we resume the play. But they're bumping into a New York Rangers team to beat them 4 times in the regular season. Does that mean anything? I have no idea. Are the Rangers a team now with Igor Shesterkin more than likely taking the goalie mantle from Henrik Lundqvist? Are they a team to watch out for right now? Could be. And they're an 11 seed. So who knows? Once you get them all into the ring, we'll see how it goes. And now I'm very interested to see how the NHL whittles down into where the hub cities are going to be. And I don't know what it's going to be like to play inside of an empty arena. These players are super motivators. They're fast starters. They're self-starters. Do they need the crowd to get themselves pumped up? No. Are the crowds helpful? Absolutely. But this is a tournament, should it come off the ground, that we're going to be really intrigued to watch because there are so many unknowns.
Now, again, so many unknowns. You don't have to make a specific pick. But who are, I guess, a couple of the bigger guns that you can see hoisting the cup when the dust settles? And why is your answer not my New York Rangers?
I just gave your New York Rangers some love, Joe. Joe, I just said your Rangers are likely to bounce Carolina, and Carolina's a pretty good playoff team.
But you did say they would lift the cup, so
no, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I still think that the top 4 seeds are the top 4 seeds for a reason.
Of course.
And I would likely suspect that one of those 8 teams, whether the 4 East or 4 West, are likely to win it. Again, I throw my palms up at you and say, who knows? Big guns likely to win. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's talent is super rich everywhere you point. I mean, they look so good getting off the bus, size-wise. It's just spectacular. And it starts in the back with a superhuman talent in goal who can be inconsistent. But when Vasilevsky's on, there aren't very many better. And at every position point, I can locate a guy who I would say is an elite level player, and they're deep. And I believe they're well coached by Coach Cooper. And they have something to play for in the fact that I think they won 62 times last year, and they flamed out in 6 days against Columbus. So there is that type of motivation. Of the Giants, I sort of like them in the East. I really love the way Philadelphia was playing. And from a X's and O's standpoint, Alain Vigneault had them going really well, Joe and PJ. That he had them shaped up well. Their top prospects were learning and maturing at just the right time and taking a real grasp to what they were doing. Their veteran star players are still more than worthy, guys like Giroux and Voracek. Couturier may be the Nicholas Backstrom type player that nobody really knows about or firmly appreciates. He's a wonderful two-way player. Philadelphia has it all. Corey, the young goalie, Hart, this will tell you how out of shape I am. The young goalie in Philadelphia, who is getting better and better and better, is likely to be the guy. I know his home road splits were a little bit alarming. His play at home was so good. But I just think that they're in that discussion. And any time a team like Colorado, to me, when the Caps saw them head-to-head, they were as good as any team I've seen all year. Unbelievable speed. Now, are they ready to excel in the proving ground that's the Stanley Cup playoffs? We're going to learn that. But a player like Nathan MacKinnon is so breathtaking, and he can take a team on his own shoulders and carry them a long way.
Now, shifting gears a bit, excuse me, from the league as a whole to the Caps, as a vet-heavy team that was kind of enduring a prolonged slump before this, do you get the sense that this break was almost welcomed by them in any way, as only in terms of the on-ice aspect of it? Obviously, you never wanted this break, but from an on-ice standpoint, was it welcomed in any way?
Well, I think about where they were at the end of the playing time, the pause time. I had started to see an uptick in their play in early March. There wasn't a large sample size, but as you mentioned, you called it a slump. They were a 500 hockey team for the better part of 6 to 8 weeks. Their start was really, really good. I mean, it looked like they were world beaters, but I think they were outscoring some of their flaws, some of their deficiencies early in the season. They were winning games maybe they shouldn't have. And that tends to balance out. And I think we were starting to see that around the time of February, and they were just Metza. They were just 50-50 all the time. I did think that, yes, as one of the top, I think, 3 or 4 oldest teams by average age, the Caps could have used a break. Could they have used a 4.5-month break? I don't know. Could they have used a month off? Yeah, to recharge the batteries. This is normally not a very fast starting team. So it behooves us, I think, to do some research on who are the best teams in the last 3 or 4 years in October. Now, people will say, Joe, wake up. Our Caps were 13-2-4 this season. That's a really good start. But I'm telling you that they were doing some things. They were getting away with things in that stretch and winning hockey games. And good hockey teams find a way to do that. But they were finding a way to win games that maybe they didn't deserve. And I don't believe that Braden Holtby will ever be regarded as a fast starter individually. His Octobers aren't very good. He tends to be tremendous in November and December. Do you have that luxury once play resumes? No. You've got to have your best guys playing their best right from the get-go. And Braden is a special type circumstance in where he is contractually. Obviously, he wants to play well to earn himself another deal, whether it be in Washington or elsewhere. And this is the time for him to emerge as, hopefully, for his sake, an elite goalie who gets paid like one.
Joe B., not many people know Alex Ovechkin better than you do.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the season was cut short. He was on pace for another 50-goal season. As someone who covers him so closely like you, how is he still putting up the numbers that he is at this stage in his career?
Well, just like that 87 guy in Pittsburgh, Alex has an incredible drive to win. It is. It's gigantic. And one of the cool things about my job, PJ, is that I get to see a player like Alex Ovechkin, a player like Nicholas Backstrom grow up. Truly, I meet them when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and I get to see them grow up into being young family men. I get to see them begin as stars in a rock and roll band, playing their lives at 1,000 miles an hour. And Alex Ovechkin still does that. He sleeps at 1,000 miles an hour. It was one of the reasons why I was so hopeful that the Caps would win the Stanley Cup someday, because I wanted to see just what Alex would do in celebration. And we all saw that in 2018. That's the way he lives his life. He burns to win. And that's what motivates him at this age to be the best player that he can possibly be. And I'm sure that the motivation is still incredibly high. Even though he has one, maybe the most important number in his life is 2 and not 894 like some have suggested. Yeah, I think he would love to eclipse Wayne Gretzky. I don't know if he's going to play long enough to do that. I don't know if his scoring acumen will stay as high as it is, but there's been no sign of a fall off. But I think the number 2, as in 2 Stanley Cups, means more to him than 894, at least right now.
Got 2 sons now as well, so congrats to him on that. I know
Yeah.
that just was some good news during all that's going on. Do you have a favorite Ovi story to tell from all your years covering him?
Oh, wow. I'll give you one. I can't give you that one. Jeez. I can't give you that. There are some you can't, and you can't.
Of course. Better
Thank
question. Your favorite one that you can tell.
Yeah, Joe, thank goodness I started down that road and I pulled up. Gosh, too many come flooding back. I'll give you one that's when Alex Ovechkin first stepped on the ice in DC at the practice rink, and Ole Kolzig was watching it. I was sitting 5 feet away from Ole. Ole wasn't on the ice. It was one of those, informal workout things. And Ole watched Alex shoot the puck and literally jaw dropped. Now, this is Ole Kolzig. This is the guy whose name is littered throughout the Caps record book, and this is no amateur player. For me, a would-be amateur goalie watching Alex Ovechkin, yes, my jaw drops. This is Ole Kolzig. This is a player who's won the Vezina Trophy in the best league in the world. And he's watching Alex Ovechkin, and he is literally, oh, my God. That was so impressive to me. And there are a lot of stories that I can relate about Alex that are like that, similar to that. But Ole's opinion was something that I always took especially close to home, because he was such a great go-to guy. People in the media would refer to him as a great quote. Yeah, he was a great quote, but he was also someone who, on background in private conversations, hey, Ole, tell me about this. He was so helpful. He was so genuine and so learned about the game. And then he's watching this young pup who's got all the reputation, who's got all the hype. And now, you would expect a star player in his own right, an all-star caliber goalie would go, yeah, okay. Whoa, his eyes were as big as mine. And it just so happened that player lived up to the hype. And Ole still to this very day thinks he's one of the best, if not the best goal scorer of all time. And it's hard to argue with that.
You alluded to it already a little bit, but you, along with every other Caps fan, thought about what it would be like if they ever got to hoist the Stanley Cup. When they finally won it and they hoisted the cup, what was going through your mind as you were watching them skate around T-Mobile Arena?
Oh, PJ, this is one question that hits close to home. And I'll gladly tell you a lot of the feelings that I was going through at that time. But there are some that are incredibly good, and there are some that were really, really bad. Let's go that way. Let's make it easy. And people will go, Joe, what the hell are you talking about? All right, let me explain. With a third period unfolding at T-Mobile Arena, I was there in a pre- and post-game capacity. I was an interview guest. I was a road analyst working with Tarek El-Bashir, Rob Carlin, and Alan May. The 4 of us were on the road for the conference final and the Stanley Cup final, and I'm forever grateful to NBC Sports Washington for sending me there so that I could see with my own eyes. This was a great, wonderful achievement, and you don't ever know when it's going to happen again. Personally, selfishly, as a play-by-play man, I want to be calling those games, but I can't. And that selfishly, personally, was tough. So with 7.5 minutes to go and Lars Eller scores in game 5, my emotions were so incredibly mixed. The highest of the highs for the group of players I've worked with for so long, for ownership, for management, for the coaching staff, for the players on the ice, for the fans in the stands. I could not be more overjoyed when it looked like, oh my God, they are actually going to win the Stanley Cup. And for me, having been connected to the team since 1994, this was an amazingly wonderful, heartwarming achievement. At the same time, I tell you that there was the other side of me that was like, oh, wow, boy, I wish that I could be talking and describing this with Craig Laughlin. I wish that I could be getting Alan May's insights, Al Koken's insights, our studio group of analysts. I wish we could have put our stamp on it. What would we have said? So for prosperity's sake, 20 years from now, boy, hit the replay on Joe and Craig and all that NBC Sports Washington. There is none. And that was amazingly frustrating in the midst of all the highest of highs of feeling good. 10 seconds left. I'm trying to get from where we were. You know, I'm 20 yards behind the glass being sort of held back in a group of media with no time left, 2 seconds left, that last draw. And no, did I expect to be running onto the ice with them? No, that's not what I was saying. I just wanted to be as close to it as possible. I'll bring you back even further, like 5 minutes left in the game. After Eller scores, the Stanley Cup gets wheeled out right in front of me. The case is right in front of me backstage at T-Mobile Arena. They start taking it out of the case. They start polishing it up. I'm literally fighting back tears of joy. That's an amazing moment that I will never, ever forget. And it's just, you wanted from a broadcast standpoint, from a professional standpoint, I would have loved to have had the ability to put an NBC Sports Washington stamp on that show, on that game, on that series. But it's one of the greatest moments of my personal life because all of the people who had gone through all the ups and downs, all the incredibly heartbreaking playoffs past, were finally going to celebrate. And I'll never forget that night because it was so much mixed emotion. But the overwhelming emotion, more than the frustration, was the sheer joy that the Caps had done it. And I couldn't be more happy for them. And the following celebrations, the days and weeks with the Cup were just amazing, incredible. And there are stories to tell within that run, which we could go into if you like, which were things that I will never, ever forget.
Please, what's your favorite story from the seemingly beer-driven bender of the summer? That
Joe. Again, I'll make it personal for you guys, and we'll pull the curtain back a little bit. My favorite one, and there were, like I said, there were tons of them. My favorite one was at Cafe Milano, one of the few instances where the team was not sharing the trophy per se with the city streets. They had done that. They had done the fountains. They had done all of that. They had spent one night at Cafe Milano, and they went upstairs and they were in a private room. And trust me, fellas, they were feeling no pain. The celebration had been the full day long, and they were finally getting some food into their systems. But Craig Laughlin and I were having dinner a few blocks away. It's the first time I had seen Craig in quite a while. Remember, Locker was in D.C. for the home portion of our coverage of the Stanley Cup final. So I was out to dinner with Locke and with his family, and Courtney's doing what she does. She's flipping through the phone and, hey, the Stanley Cup's at Cafe Milano. And I'm like, gosh, that's not far from where we are. So off we go, and Craig and I managed to talk our way through the whole restaurant is surrounded by thousands of people, but they're not letting those folks in. Locker and I managed to talk our way through the guards past the maitre d' and get upstairs. And here we go. I should tell you that in my, almost 30 plus years of professional hockey broadcasting, I've been in the same room with the Stanley Cup a lot, but I've never touched it. ever. And that's just a product of my professional upbringing that I was reminded, or at least instructed or told by past bosses, that's the holy grail. That's for the players who play and perform for it, who sweat and bleed for it. You know, you're an accent piece. You're there to cover. You're there to explain. You're there to describe. But that trophy, that's sacred. And I had never touched it. I swear to you. And Craig Laughlin, who played for and who competed for the Stanley Cup, was of the same mindset that you don't win it, you don't touch it. And he had never touched it as well. So now, with that in mind, we make this walk upstairs at Cafe Milano, and there is Lord Stanley's Cup and the entire team in celebration and getting some food in them. Thank God they did. And having a wonderful time. And this was the first time that we had seen them privately since they had won the cup. And one by one, hey, Joe, pick it up. No. John Carlson was the first to say it. I'm like, John, no. We just wanted to come and give you our congratulations, shake hands with everybody, tell you how happy, how thrilled we are for you. Joe, pick it up. No, John, I can't do that. I won't do that. I'm not going to do that. This is yours. Lars Eller, pick it up. Tom Wilson, pick it up. One by one, standing. And it was so heartwarming to feel like this group of champions wanted to include me in that celebration. And that was a story and a night I will never forget. I picked it up to about shoulder high. I didn't put it over my head. That's it. I couldn't do that. Again, I didn't win it, but Locker did too. Locker actually picked up the Stanley Cup, and I was touched by that. I'll never, ever forget it, and I hope we get a chance to do it again and again. But we did for that one night, and the team, to have the team, I mean, one by one, Braden Holtby, everybody who was there, pick it up. Sometimes putting an expletive in, picked up.
That's so cool.
It was pretty cool.
That's incredible. No easy way to transition out of that, but on a similar note, what was the difference between the teams that fell short and that team? And then how do you think this year's team compared to that iteration?
Okay, so I personally think the Caps could be a dynasty type team and should be a dynasty type team. I just told you, I'm forever grateful for 2018. I'm not going to be greedy. But if I were being greedy, the 16 team and the 17 team may have been better than the 18 team.
Sure.
And I think they were maybe on the ice. But you asked me what the difference was. The 18 team was able to overcome adversity, was able to take a punch in the nose and respond better than the one in 16 and 17. I think the one in 19 that lost to Carolina in the first round could have, would have, should have again. And things were laid out really well when you think about the division winners falling in the first round, including Washington last year. It was set up again for them to. So I'm talking dynasty. Maybe you pick off one of those 16-17s against Pittsburgh. I think the team that won that Pittsburgh-Washington series in 16 and 17 was going to win the cup, and it did. It was Pittsburgh twice. And then Washington beats Pittsburgh in 18, wins the cup. Do you notice the trend?
Yeah.
19, you could have, would have, should have. So there is that run there where you have been really fortunate as a hockey fan in D.C. to be enamored with a team that is really darn good and can go very, very deep. The 18 team found luck at the right time, stayed healthy for the most part, played really, really well in the key crucial instances, and overcame adversity. How many times would you have seen in the past Columbus or any team take the first two games in Washington in overtime and the Caps rally? No, that usually doesn't happen. How often do you see it? Had you seen it happen in game 3, the game that goes to double overtime in Columbus? Panarin hits the post late in regulation. Somebody else hit the post in overtime. Those pucks go in the net against the Caps in the playoffs in the past. In the next round, Kuhnhackl in game 6, where Kuznetsov wins it, Kuhnhackl hits the post in overtime just moments before that series-ending goal. Good luck, good fortune, the ability to overcome adversity. Win the first 2 games against Tampa, lose the next 3 in the conference final. Most of the times that we've seen the Caps in the past in their playoff history, they're done. Instead, They played two of the best games I've ever seen the Caps play, and I've been around here since 1994. Game 6 of the conference final in Washington against Tampa Bay is maybe the best game I've ever seen the Caps play. I knew they were going to win the Stanley Cup after Game 6 of the conference final. That's when I knew. I knew they would go to Tampa and get the job done, and I've said this before. I've disrespected Vegas all throughout the year. They made me look stupid all throughout the year, I'll admit it. But I knew Washington could beat Vegas, and they would, and they did so. But that was a team that was more than anything, for whatever reason, punched them in the nose, lose top players to suspension, Tom Wilson, lose top players to injury, Nicholas Backstrom. They were able to overcome that adversity and win, whereas the teams that may have been even better and more talented in the past didn't or couldn't.
Oof. Joe B, you're giving me chills walking down memory lane again. That's some good stuff.
And PJ's he's the Caps fan between the two of us. So PJ, I can't even imagine what it's like for you hearing this. The
That's
Rangers
awesome.
will get there one day in my lifetime. It's been 1994. I was born in '98, so we're not there yet though.
Joe B, before we get to our two closing segments that we like to do with each guest, real quick, we got to ask you about your wardrobe because it is next level. So do you have a favorite suit of yours that you bring out for maybe the biggest of games or something like that?
Of course I do. Sure I do. PJ, I got to tell you, I haven't been in professional business dress since I'm worried that I don't know how to tie a necktie anymore. I'm totally out of shape. But the wardrobe has, I don't know, it's overtaken the size of my house. I live in a townhome. I think I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 closets. They're overrun by clothing. I'm embarrassed to show people how much, but it's a product of, I've been on TV here in DC for more than 25 years. No, all those clothes aren't still in style or do they fit, but they're still amassed here. I need to donate. I need to give away. But sure, there are favorites in the rotation. The big games, there are certain ones that will make an appearance more than others. I try not to be too repetitive, so I don't want you to see me in the same outfit one night on Monday and then again on the following Monday. And again, with all the clothes I have, it's a passion of mine too. I mean, I love it, but with all the clothing I have, you shouldn't see me duplicate any outfit from game 1 through game 82. No, there's too much of that.
All right, the two segments that PJ teased in, we call it the Swift 7, and then we got a trivia question for you.
Swift 7.
Swift 7. 7 questions.
All right. I'm getting scared. I better stretch out now.
7 questions, quick. Don't think about it much. Just first that comes to your mind and a couple words or less.
You guys are really trying to get me in trouble. Okay, here we go.
Nothing too bad. Question 1. Better 80s dynasty, Islanders or Oilers?
Oh, jeez Louise. Oilers. By a smidge. And I was there. The Islander dynasty was my 4 years in high school. And I necessarily was not an Islander fan. My dad was a New York Rangers fan, New York City firefighter. And I would go up to my high school buddies. They're not going to win it again. Boom. They're not going to win it again. Screw you. They're not going to win it. The Islanders were clutch. The Oilers, though, that's tight. But Oilers by a smidge.
Number 2, better beard, Holtby or Tom Wilson?
Better is better. Wilson. Holtby's gets messy.
Better goal scorer, Ovi or Gretzky?
Ovechkin. Oh God.
Favorite press box snack?
Popcorn.
Favorite city to visit on the road?
Oh man. Montreal.
Favorite sport to watch besides hockey?
College football.
And who's the funniest player on the Caps? I know there are a lot of jokesters.
Oh wow. Gosh, there are a lot of good ones. That's a tough one. There are a lot of good ones. She's pretty good.
Okay.
She's pretty good.
All right, Joe B.
There's a lot of good ones.
You made it through the Swift 7. There you go.
Got through the Swift 7. You did very well. So we got a trivia question for you. We think it's pretty good. You know, we know as a play-by-play guy, you got all kinds of stats and things you keep track of. But
I'm told you, I'm out of touch.
all right.
I need a phase 3 warm-up.
We're 50-50 so far. Tim Kirchin missed his question. Minka Fitzpatrick got his question.
Tim Kirchin missed his question.
I know.
I have no chance.
So here it is. Alex Ovechkin has scored 40 or more goals against 4 franchises in his career. Can you name those 4 franchises? We'll give you 90 seconds and you get 3 strikes. All right.
He has 40. Hang on. Don't push.
Not yet. Go ahead.
He has 40 or more goals.
Yes.
Against 4 different franchises.
Correct. Throughout his career. Yep.
Can you name them? Okay.
Yep. All right, Joe B, your time starts now.
Atlanta, Winnipeg.
Correct.
That's the one that we thought you had trouble on. So there we go. You're gonna
well
get this.
done.
Tampa.
Correct.
40. Florida.
Florida's 39. That was the one that
I knew that was
missed.
close. I knew that was close.
That's strike 1.
Atlanta, Winnipeg. How many strikes do I get? 3 I'm out?
3.
3, yeah.
How much time do I have, please?
You're
Can
at
you use
30
the word
seconds.
in a sentence? Can you give me the origin? Atlanta, Winnipeg for sure. That's a layup. Tampa for sure. Gosh, Florida, I knew he was close.
You're at 40 seconds. So you got 50 left. You got plenty of time.
Yeah. I'm okay there. 40. Philadelphia?
No.
40. Well, he's owned Lundqvist. So Rangers?
Not the Rangers.
I struck out.
That's
did.
it. Struck out.
So you got Winnipeg and Atlanta, which was tied with Tampa for the most. He scored at 48.
Those are the easy 2.
The other 2 was Carolina at 43.
That was my next guess, damn it.
and Toronto at 41.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't have got Toronto. Would have got 3. Should have got 3 of the 4. Would have guessed Montreal before Toronto because he's owned Carey Price. Would have eventually gotten to Carolina. Interesting. Well done.
He scored a lot of goals against a lot of teams.
That was good. You got right off the bat. But yeah,
well, I should have had 3 in a row because I thought Florida was a cinch.
Yeah, it was right. 39 is 1 away.
That's because he hasn't played them enough. Carolina was in there, and
43.
The 4th one was Toronto.
Yeah.
41.
How many does he have against Philly?
Philly, we do not know. We kept track of the top 4, and then
I'll look it up
we
for
knew
you
at
real
39.
quick.
But
Let me
yeah,
see.
Joe can look it up.
Alex Ovechkin goals by opponent. Let's see real quick if I can find this.
Carolina should have came out of my mouth in the first 3.
Career splits. Here we go. Found it quicker than I thought I was going to. Philadelphia Flyers. He has 34. And the Rangers that you guessed, he's got 35. So they're close on both.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The close isn't any good. Close is a strikeout. And I'm the authority on Ovechkin. I should have got that. Wow, that's pitiful.
You gave us an incredible.
Actually, you know what I did was I did not pay attention to my strikes. I didn't play the game right. I should not. I should have just put those on a piece of paper in front of me, mulled it over, and then offered it rather than guessing, because guessing led to strikes.
All that means is we're gonna have to have you back in the future.
No,
we're gonna have
the hell no. I struck out on Ovechkin. I'm done. I'm used to it.
Joe, we can't thank you enough. This was incredible. We started this here quarantine to kind of stay into it. Like you said, when you came on, you haven't had work in a while. Neither have we, and we tried to kind of keep it interesting and have some fun. So we can't thank you enough for coming on and entertaining us with all of your stories.
I haven't had any work in a while, obviously, by my Ovechkin answer. I'm rusty.
Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it.
I'm afraid to find out what's going to happen in August. Let's go. See ya.
Hopefully it's a Capitals or Rangers. I'll give you the Caps. Hopefully it's a Caps or Rangers lifting the trophy. That's what we hope.
I understand that, Joe. I know where your bread's buttered. At least it's red, white, and blue.
Exactly.
Take it easy, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
That was the great Joe Beninati, Capitals play-by-play announcer. And Joe, I mean, how good were the stories? We knew we were getting a play-by-play guy. I mean, it'd be articulate. There'd be some good stories there. But the one he told of the Caps winning the Stanley Cup, especially, we just had the 2-year anniversary of it. For me being a Caps fan, I mean, that was some pretty special stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at your face the whole time he was telling that story, and it looked like a kid on Christmas morning. Like, it's just your eyes absolutely lit up. And hey, I mean, play-by-play guys, you think of the likes of Vince Scully. I know here in the New York area, whenever I hear Gary Cohen for the Mets tell a story,
Right.
or Howie Rose tell a story for the Mets, they're the best storytellers in most cases because they're always there. They always have the access. The tidbit he gave us about that Olaf Kolzig story with Ovi, there's only a couple of people who were there for that practice, and he's one of them. So the insight that he and play-by-play broadcasters can provide, it's invaluable. And the stories blew me away. I mean, I had actually heard that Stanley Cup story before because he spoke at one of my classes at Maryland and told it. And as he was telling it, it wasn't as if I had previously heard it. It was as if I was hearing it again for the first time because he tells it so well and it's such a phenomenal story. But it's incredible having him on to hear that perspective as a broadcaster, as a fan, and just how in-depth he can go on Ovi. Couldn't get the trivia question on Ovi.
I was going to say.
He'll beat himself up over that, I'm sure.
Will.
And he'll have to come back, like I had mentioned to him. He'll have to come back to redeem himself. But overall, incredible. And as far as his takes on where we kind of go from here when the NHL resumes, I think he pretty much nailed everything. There's one thing, though, that I wanted to point out that I do disagree with him a little bit on, that I wanted to touch on here. The point that he made about going back and looking at which teams are notorious slow starters, because he mentioned, like, the Capitals, with the exception of this season, they're notorious slow starters. So how will that affect them going from basically a 4-month off season right into the playoffs? And I don't necessarily know that that'll be the case, because if you think about why teams start slow, part of it's rust, but you could throw that out the window because every team right now is going to be rusty. Every team had the same layoff, so everybody's on equal footing in terms of that. The other part of it is more psychological. You take a team like the Caps, for example. Every year almost they're on a deep playoff run into May, okay? So they already have inherently a month shorter of an off season than the majority of the league. So now in October, with a month less of rest than some other teams, you're asking them to come out and get amped up for a Wednesday night game against the Arizona Coyotes. Like, they're just not going to care as much, right? Because they know in the back of their mind that, okay, we'll flip the switch in January and we'll go on an 8-game winning streak, and our slow start in October is forgotten. So I think that plays a lot into teams starting slowly, that psychological aspect of it. And you don't have that now, because as soon as you get back now, it's the chase for the Stanley Cup. Everybody is going to be focused on that one goal. So everybody's on equal footing in terms of the rust aspect, and that mental lapse that leads teams to start slowly should not be there. So I don't necessarily know that'll be the case, that the teams who are notoriously slow or fast starters will follow that trend, because the Caps, who are notorious slow starters, they can't come out and say, oh, we'll flip the switch in January. Like, no, you have your couple of round robin games to determine the seeding, and then you're fighting for your life already. So I don't know that'll go the way he said it. But everything else, I mean, I think he pretty much nailed on the head. I pretty much agree with. That was the one thing that stood out to me, that I could see it going the opposite of how he said it.
Yeah, their teams really have no room, like you said, to slow start. I mean, especially aren't the first couple series they're best of fives, aren't they?
Best of five.
Best of five, right?
Exactly.
So even more, I mean, you got to jump on it right away. And some of the interesting matchups too, like you look at the Blackhawks versus the Oilers. You got a veteran team in the Blackhawks that have won multiple cups against the young guns of the Oilers. Those kinds of series are going to be really interesting to see. If those kind of rust things do play a factor, if experience plays a factor, there are a lot of different things that this new format and how the NHL and stuff that the NBA is going to face too with this long layoff, how all of these teams are going to deal with the long layoff and if rust will play a factor.
And that's why I think, like we were touching on with him, I personally think that this year more than any other year, again, like he said, it's tough to handicap, and anybody who comes up with a prediction is pretty much a liar at this point. Then call me a liar. I'm going to obviously it's our job, to try to make sense of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think this year more than any other year, you're going to have fewer upsets because of all the variables that are taken out of the equation. There's no team that was hot in March carrying that into the postseason. There's no riding your home ice advantage, the roar of the crowd. There isn't any of that, and everybody's got the same level of rust. So I think more than any other year, the cream is going to rise to the top this year, and the more talented teams will have an easier go of it. In the first, second round, where there's a big talent gap between the top-seeded teams and some of the lower-seeded teams. That changes, obviously, as you go further along, and now you're getting the best of the best. But, if my Rangers come out of the first round against the Hurricanes, we don't even stand a chance talent-wise going up against the likes of the Bruins or the Lightning, Caps. Flyers are different. The Flyers were one of those streaky teams that were hot when the season ended. But those top three teams, the Caps, Bruins, and Lightning, the Rangers can't hold a candle to them. So it's going to be tougher, I think, for those lesser talented teams to pull off the early upsets. And it's going to be really interesting to see, though, if there are any upsets at all. I really think the rust is equal for everybody, so talent really has a chance to win out, given that all the other variables are out of the equation.
I think, too, more than ever, you always need a hot goaltender to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but especially this year, if the goaltender's team gets off to a maybe rusty start, a little slow start, and you need your goalie to win a game or two for you to start, I think that will play a big factor. And some of those first-round matchups, a team like Florida with Bobrovsky, or you look at some of the veteran teams, the Jets with Hellebuck, some of those teams who got good goaltenders who have been there before could maybe alone steal a series for their team.
And that's why, for me, the first round matchup in the East, at least, that I'm circling in red marker and looking at very closely is Penguins-Canadiens. Penguins will get Jake Gensel back, and that's huge for them. But Matt Murray he's won them a couple of cups, and he's shown that he can get streaky and hot in the playoffs. But he was very inconsistent this year, very, very inconsistent. On the flip side, when of all the goaltenders in the league, if they were all at their peak, nobody is close to Carey Price. It's Carey Price, Andrei Vasilevsky, and then everybody else kind of falls in the line after that. Carey Price, at his peak, is the best goaltender in the NHL. It's not even close. And in a 5-game series, the Canadiens got lucky and got in. They were the lowest point total team to get in with this new format. In a 5-game series, Carey Price can steal that. I'm not saying the Canadiens will upset them, but I'm going to watch that series very, very closely, because it's going to be really interesting to see, in a neutral site, like Carey Price steal it on the back end. You give them some tough situations on the other end of the ice, and maybe you steal a goal or two, and that might be all you need.
That matchup's definitely intriguing. I love, too, in the East, the first-round matchup between your Rangers and the Hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
I know, talking to you, you love what the Rangers have done the past couple of years, how they built their team. You thought maybe they'd sneak in as a 7 or 8 seed. They get this opportunity now with the expanded playoffs to get some experience in the postseason. And they go up against the Hurricanes, who maybe were viewed as the Rangers of last season.
Exactly.
Kind of a team getting in, young and dumb, don't know any better, to just play hard, a good coach, carrying these younger kids, and the Hurricanes have that experience from last year. I think this series can definitely go 5 games, totally up for grabs, and it's going to be really interesting. And I'll add, too, I think how beautiful it is to see a 5-12, 6-11 matchup. We didn't get March Madness, and this is kind of the closest thing we get. So I do love that. But those two matchups for sure in the East, I think most people.
I tried to steer away from the Rangers series to not be a homer, but I'm really looking forward to that, because, like you said, the Rangers are playing with house money. They've got nothing to lose.
Exactly.
And they're getting Chris Kreider back. They were only a couple games out. Igor Shesterkin coming back. He got into that car accident with Pavel Buchnevich. Both of them are thankfully fine from it. But Shesterkin might not have played much, if at all, the rest of the regular season had this delay not happened. So they're getting all their pieces back. They went 4-0 against the Canes in the regular season. So there's a lot of – and as we get closer to the playoffs starting, we will go through and dissect each matchup more closely, because obviously there's no live sports to talk about. So we will talk about what is coming up in terms of that. That one, obviously, I'm looking forward to, and it's got a lot of moving parts. And then the Penguins-Canadiens, for me, are the two biggest ones that I'm really looking forward to. As far as contenders go, it's tough, again, because you don't know necessarily how the bracket's even going to shake out after that round robin for the top 4 seeds. So we can't get into that until actually after the play-in round. That's when we'll know the seedings, and we can go from there with the last 16. But Joe B had it down to 8. He said he thinks the cup winner is going to come from those top 4 teams in either conference. They were there for a reason. I think I could narrow it down even a little further. I think of those 8 teams, the teams I'm looking at are Vegas. Then in the East, you're looking at the Lightning, the Bruins, and then back out West, I think I give the nod to the Avalanche. The Blues are in first, but again, it's always tough to repeat. They're getting some pieces back too from injury. Bennington could steal a series as he's shown last year, but I'm looking at the Avalanche with their speed and talent. I'm looking at the Golden Knights as a very complete, well-rounded team with Marc-Andre Fleury in net. I'm looking at those 2 in the West. I'm looking at the Lightning and the Bruins in the East. And I think for now, my tentative cup pick is going to just be the Lightning. They can basically roll whatever line they want defensively, and it's almost a top line. Like their third D pair is probably the top D pair on a third of the league's teams. And then behind that, you have Vasilevsky, who when he's on is the only one, in my opinion, that is that close to Carey Price. And then going forward, I mean, between Stamkos back healthy and Kucherov, the list goes exactly. The list goes on and on for them offensively. And I think you mentioned college basketball. It's nice to see a 6-11 matchup like March Madness. For me, thinking about the Lightning this year, it takes my mind back to UVA.
Exactly.
UVA lost to the 16 seed, came back next year, won the cup. Lightning tied the wins record last year, got swept by the 8 seed Blue Jackets.
Was just going to bring that up. Yep.
Big time redemption story. So my four contenders are the Lightning, Bruins, Avs, and Golden Knights. Of that group, I like the Lightning.
Totally with you. That was going to be my point, is why I like Tampa so much, is because I see them as Virginia. This group, they've been to the Stanley Cup before when they lost to the Blackhawks. They've been to Eastern Conference Finals. They know how to win in the postseason. And like you said, usually the NHL is so based on upsets, but I'm with you. I kind of just feel like this year might be mostly chalk. The cream rises to the top, and nobody has better talent than Tampa Bay.
No, it's not even close.
Joe B was talking about when they get off the bus. I mean, they just look different than everybody else. And when they get on the ice, they look pretty different than everybody else too.
They have the talent to shut teams down defensively, and they have Vasilevsky. But then their defensemen like Hedman, they also score. And Ryan McDonough could shut you down, as you saw him shut down Ovechkin for all those years in those Rangers-Capitals matchups. And they just it's just one after another. They don't have a bad line.
Now they're a machine.
It's incredible.
And
again, like this, going back to what we were saying about slow starters, they started slow this year, understandably, because there was that kind of hangover from last year, and it made sense. But now I don't think you will see them start slow in the postseason because they know what's on their mind. Redemption for last year, the talent they have. I think they'll just kind of run with it.
I'm with you. All right, so now we'll get into our final 2 segments as we always do, the Where Would You Go, Joe, and then, of course, the trivia questions for each other. Didn't cheat this week, Joe. You were on me about cheating, so I had to make sure I got June 11th this time when the podcast episode 3 drops. And we got 4 really good ones.
I looked at the list ahead of time. It is really good.
A mixture of events. Luckily, now we're starting to get to the time when multiple sports start to overlap. So we got answer choice A, June 11th, 1977. You get to see Seattle Slew win the Triple Crown at the Belmont. And remember, he was the last Triple Crown horse up until American Pharoah. So that's definitely a big one. Answer choice B, you have the Rangers at the A's in 1990, where Nolan Ryan threw his 6th no-hitter. You got answer C, 2017 French Open. You get to see the king of clay, Rafael Nadal, defeat Stan Wawrinka for his 10th French Open title. Or you get answer choice D, Devils at Kings, Game 6, with the Kings leading 3-2 in LA, and you get a chance to see the Kings hoist their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. This is the best we've had.
This is a good one. Once we started this segment, I knew in the back of my mind I was going to be looking forward to a couple of weeks from when we started, because that's when you start getting to the championship.
Exactly.
And I really had a tough time thinking about this when I saw the initial list. Seattle Slew the Triple Crown. I enjoy watching the 3 Triple Crown races every year. Not a big horse racing guy. As incredible as the Triple Crown is, that was one for me that would be fun, but I'm putting it to the side. Nolan Ryan's no-hitter, that's kind of like a bucket list item that you don't have any control over. And
correct.
It's total luck.
Everybody feels, they want to see one. Sure.
being at a game with a no-hitter. So,
Yep.
so that one really stuck out to me. That one's in the mix. Answer C, the 2017 French Open, Nadal beating Stan Wawrinka. That one for me went aside because, look, there's no novelty in that. It was his 10th French Open title. It's not like it's anything new. So it's kind of like been there, done that, seen that, just a different opponent. Okay, being there would have been cool, but you knew the outcome of that match before it started. Basically, as it's been for the last decade plus with Nadal on clay. So that one goes away for me. It's between B and D. Devils Kings, cup in the building. I know they clinched on this night. They did lift the trophy. As cool as the no-hitter would be, and as much of a bucket list item as that is, that people want to see it, I got to go with D. The Stanley Cup is the best trophy in hockey. The NHL has the best playoffs in all of sports. A chance to win your franchise's first title. I hate the Devils as a Rangers fan, so to see the Kings then do that against the Devils, that was the one that stuck out to me the most. I picked that one. I go see them lift the cup and really enjoy the excitement of that night.
Interesting. Personally, I would have gone Seattle Slew, Triple Crown, and I'll tell you why. I ran into Marlins man about a year or two ago, and I asked him, of all the sporting events you've ever been to, what's your favorite one? And he said, watching American Pharaoh win the Triple Crown. He said, when you have 150,000 people all screaming and cheering for the same horse, it was unbelievable. I understand back then there probably wasn't 150,000 people there. They obviously didn't have social media. But you talked about history with the no-hitter and how that's on everybody's bucket list. For me, to see a horse win a Triple Crown,
but see, I'll tell you what,
rare as it is.
I'll tell you what, if this would have been American Pharaoh's Triple Crown, I might have leaned that way more just because it had been so long since there was one. But back in this era, it hadn't been as long previously before Seattle Slew one. So it wasn't as there wasn't as it's obviously incredible, but there wasn't as much of a mystique around it because there wasn't as big of a gap. So if it was American Pharaohs, and maybe, I don't know the date that American Pharaoh won, maybe that comes up next week. But if it were that one, I might have gone that way. But just because there was such a big gap before American Pharaoh.
Fair enough. Got no problem with that. All right, and then we'll get into our trivia. So you're leading 1-0. I have yet to get one. I'm hoping to get one this week. But since you're winning, do you want to give your question to me first?
I will let you ask me the question first this week.
Sounds good. All right. So I think you're going to like this one too this week. Going off of the trivia question we had for Joe B, we asked him the 4 franchises that Ovi has scored 40 or more goals against in his career. So I'm going to ask you the 4 franchises that Ovi has scored 10 or less goals against in his career. Now, remember, time won't be a problem. This is all about the strikes.
It's really the guess,
Exactly. It's all about the guess, all right? So I'll let you think about that, and I'll put 90 seconds on the clock for you.
Start it whenever you're ready. Let me know.
Go for it.
Vegas, because
correct. That's
I mean, they haven't had enough. That's
Vegas.
The
correct.
easy one because they haven't played enough. My mind goes west because there's obviously a ton fewer matchups against Western Conference opponents. I will say Vancouver.
Vancouver is another correct answer.
All right, that's 2. I got plenty of time. It's just a matter of strikes right now. Thinking more relatively recently added teams, also out west, the Minnesota Wild.
No, not the Wild.
Okay.
Good guess, though.
1 strike. How much time do I got?
You got 40 seconds, so you got 50 seconds left, just at the 40-second mark.
All right, so I've got 2. Does well on the California trips. They don't play Arizona a ton, obviously, being out west. Arizona is the correct answer.
All right. 3. So you got 1 left. This is the toughest one of the book.
Okay.
And you got 22 seconds left.
All right.
And 2 strikes to work with.
Buffalo Sabres.
Not Buffalo, no.
Okay.
15 seconds, 1 strike.
I just wanted to guess an Eastern Conference team. It's tough. I'm going to go with the Anaheim Ducks.
Oof, it is not Anaheim. It's
the
Colorado Avalanche.
Oh,
we're the last one.
That team crossed my mind, but I know that they've had some decent battles in like the McKinnon versus Ovi, so I didn't think to say that. But
he had he had
sense.
3 against Vegas. They were the easy one. He had 8. He has 8 against Arizona and Colorado, and then 9 against Vancouver.
Yeah, that's a good question. One away.
Yeah, one away. You were close.
I'll take a small moral victory in that Joe B only got
2 right, and you got 3. That's correct.
So I'll take a small moral victory in that. All right, my question for you. I think this is perfect.
I'm excited.
So many. I'll explain why afterwards. All right. Alex Ovechkin won the Rookie of the Year in the NHL in 2006. There were 4 players that year that got a considerable amount of the vote for Rookie of the Year.
Okay.
2 of the 3, besides Ovechkin, are also, like Ovechkin, first ballot Hall of Famers. Can you name who those 2 players are?
Currently still playing.
I can't say that.
Okay.
Just who that year, there were 4 guys who got a considerable amount of the vote.
Gotcha.
2 of the 3, like Ovechkin, are surefire first ballot Hall of Famers. If you could name the 3rd guy who's more obscure, I'll give it to you on that one alone, but I know you're not going to name him. So consider the question if you can name the 2 other first ballot Hall of Famers, and your time begins now.
Yeah, I don't think I had NHL 2006, the video game, so I probably wouldn't get the obscure guy. Crosby?
Yes.
Crosby's the easy one. All right. So we got Crosby, Ovi, and man, who else was that year? Like an older. I'll go with Corey Perry.
No. 1 strike, 30 seconds gone.
Okay. Let's see. Ooh.
40 seconds gone.
Let's see. I'm wondering if it could be a goalie, like if it could be like a Lundqvist or a Ryan Miller, or it's probably got to be a goal scorer though. I'll go with let me think. I'm a goal scorer now.
60 seconds gone. 30 left.
Oof. Yeah, I'll go goalie. Was it Lundqvist?
It was.
Was it? Nice. Beautiful.
I love that question for you because, like, I know when we in the office just like playing random sports trivia when we got our downtime, like hockey's your least favorite, so I didn't want to make it too hard, but I didn't want to give you a layup. And I knew the way I phrased it, like it gave you a shot because if they're a first ballot Hall of Famer that was a rookie in 06, they were either still playing or recently retired now. So like, you would have a good pool of players to choose from. But even so, like there were tricks in there because, you know, you think NFL Rookie of the Year, it's guys from the same draft class. But Ovi was the year before Crosby, but there was a lockout year, so they had the same rookie season. And Lundqvist was drafted in 2000, but didn't make his rookie season until the 05-06 season. So there were a lot of layers to that. I'm glad that you got it because
I would have been so mad if I had brought up his name.
I'm glad you got it because you would have hated yourself if you brought up his name but didn't still say it. So there we go, 1-1.
Who's the other guy? Who's the
Dion Phaneuf. You were not getting that.
Was not going to get
the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, he's on the Kings now, right? Is he on the Kings?
Yeah, he's made his way around now. He's still clinging on, but he's not. He's had a decent career, but not the other guys. So it was.
That was good.
Again, I like that for you. You had a chance. I didn't want to make it too easy. I didn't want to make it too hard. I gave you a chance, and you got it. I would have laughed so incredibly hard, though, if you mentioned Lundqvist, but still did not get it.
That would have been bad. All right, that was awesome, though.
That was good.
Good hockey conversation. Thanks again to the great Joe Beninati for joining us to talk some hockey. And we look forward to next week's episode. We'll see you then.
We're getting closer and closer to more live sports. So PGA Tour is back, and we're getting closer and closer. We hope there's some baseball news to talk about next week. So we're getting there. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter, and we hope you join us next week, episode 4 of the Glass of Joe podcast.